the Ouroboros, basically the thing that David Flynn wrote about, in essence, the snake eating its own tail in the Milky Way that basically moves at every 26,500 years. The point that David Flynn was making is that was, if you will, a time line. And what now CERN is doing, by the way, CERN is only 172 miles from the tomb of the Celtic prince that was just found. And what's interesting is one of the items that stood out in the Celtic, actually, people pronounce it Celtic, prince that was found is a horned figure. Now, I want to share with everyone where I think it goes wrong in their understanding. Everything Paul says in Ephesians 6:12 through 14, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay? He identifies most of this stuff as the present rulers, but people don't understand that if you've ever seen any of the Greek really bad science fiction movies, they always show the Greek gods with little g's, the fallen angels, moving humans around as pawns on a chessboard. You've seen that, Greg, I'm sure. Doug, Joe, you've seen it. With some of the very first science fiction movies were basically really bad adaptations of Jason and the Argonauts, etc. And there's a perfect example where in every one of these things, it's the gods, again, I say with little g, the demigods that move this around. What's interesting, though, is in the stuff, and look, there's so much stuff to talk about, Greg, on CERN, and I want to draw everyone's attention. If they'll go to my website and start with CERN 1, I did not put this stuff together. I put part of it together. But the point is that when God, out of His love, and this is where people don't get this, and this is why I'm going to say it one more time, when God, out of His love, kept back the unseen forces of hell and darkness, there was a protective barrier that the Lord Himself put in place, that just as He put Adam and Eve in a garden, He basically put us into a place of safekeeping when we honored Him. The powers of darkness and their servants are trying and going to succeed to literally bring down all the gates of hell, open up all the portals of hell, set all that which has been bound for the sake of mankind to keep us from being destroyed, opening that up. So, excuse me, the disconnect that I speak specifically tonight while we're on the radio is the fact that it's spiritual and natural. And the place I'm trying to segue to transition to, is to get people to understand that when Paul says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the ruler of darkness of this world, he's talking about everything that's being invisible. Now, to CERN, I was contacted some years ago, and even by, told by Special Operations Generals a number of years ago what was really going on with that. And according to them, now these are guys that you could relate to, Greg, in the military, but these are guys that are no nonsense people. And when they're telling me that they're seeing entities and light entities, in essence, at the end of the time tunnel, they're not kidding. A couple scientists got a message to me and basically said, look, this is what they're doing, and what they're doing, and this is why it was shut down. Now, what Joe was just speaking about is duplicating the power. Isn't it interesting, Joe, that in order to break through, they realize they've got to up the power almost exponentially. So as Greg was giving Einsteinian physics, saying there's nothing faster than the speed of light, or that's what basically Einstein postulated, that's no longer true. I mean, Doug, we've done shows, and there have been numerous stories that, yes, things can travel fast as the speed of light. A good example was the classic experiment, two people separated by distance and having an instantaneous thought where it appears, and that gets into basically quantum physics, and a thing called superpotential. But the point that I'm trying to make in all this is that what they're doing with CERN, and this is, I think it's just cool of God, where He says, one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is discernment. Now, when you look at even CERN's logo, it's 666. The idea that men become gods ye shall become as God, knowing both good and evil. Well, what they only see, Doug, or what they're postulating, Greg, is that this can only be for our betterment. But again, supernova, and I want to make this clear for everyone, the world is not going to blow up, okay? The world is going to hell up. Everything in hell is going to come up. It's going to be like everything that's been loosed. Imagine if you live in a small town. Here's the best illustration I can give you. Let's say you live in a town of 2,000. You got a prison of 20,000. All of a sudden, 20,000 prisoners are let loose in a town of 2,000. Now just scale that into the realm of an innumerable number of fallen angels. Obviously, God knows the numbers, but I don't. And then they're all released on the earth at the same time. That doesn't present a good time for baseball, hot dogs, and apple pie. So that's what we're heading up for, and that's why when the angel, and I said this before, if an angel cries out in the book of Revelation, woe, woe, woe unto the inhabitants of earth, for the devil has come down knowing he's got, I'm paraphrasing, his time is short, then what do you expect payback to be like? And so this is the thing, Greg, that I want to, try and get through to people tonight, that in essence, on the left hand, everything we've talked about, it doesn't matter if it's a financial, martial law, forced vaccination, medical martial law, all these things, that's on the left hand. The ultimate goal of everything, the ultimate goal of the Illuminati, the Luciferians, the globalists, the elite column, is the destruction of 6-point-whatever billion people to leave 500 million. Now, we can talk about the Georgia Guidestones since the time they were first erected. I can quote, I think I did this one time, Doug, on a 3-hour show. I can't say I quoted every statement, but years ago I quoted every statement that had to do in the 3-hour time frame with the destruction of humanity. From Prince, Philip saying he wants to come back as a virus if there was such a thing as reincarnation. By the way, they do. Yesterday, Greg, I don't know if you saw it, Doug and Joe, but the front headline is Google 500. In other words, Google says it's going to be a common thing to live to be 500 years old, and obviously we know from Methuselah was old, he was 969 years old, and so things are going to change. The atmosphere is going to change. I'm talking not the political atmosphere, I'm talking the physical atmosphere. The chemtrails are changing it, and what happens is that these entities have to take on physicality, and one of the ways they take on physicality, and this was told to me by by a multiple star general, higher than most people are aware of, is that they need to basically geoengineer the earth to take it back to the primordial days, okay? In other words, and gravity is going to change. And so all of the earth changes, and look at just the drought. If you can always look at everything simply this way: control equals death. Control equals death. They control the water. Obviously, the crops don't grow. People can't raise cattle. People starve. And at the same time, shot in the arm, shot in the head, either way you end up dead. The fact that the information against vaccines is so, let's just say this, there is no way to say that there's any information that can show vaccines are good. Only 18% of the new flu vaccine is effective. CDC admits to an 82% failure. Well, I got news for you. I don't like those odds. And I would say this: damn the thinking, and I mean that, to the literal hell that would cause these little children to suffer and to end up with autism or dead. And I mean that, again, I will say that, damn to the deepest hell. Now someone say, well, if you were a real Christian, you wouldn't swear. The word damnation I'm using about is the eternal separation from the living God of all righteous, everything is beautiful, fair, and true, and an eternal, if you will, misery index that everything that even they enjoy will be cut off from them forever. So as the person who was talking, Doug, who was doing the talking during the break, talking about the CIA and the forced vaccinations, checking the response?
That was Dr. Ted Broer. He's a friend of the program. Okay. He also subs for Joyce Riley.
Okay. Well, God bless him, and I mean that. I guess I'm a little ignorant out of this, but what he was saying is absolutely true. They test. Now, notice the ATF, just switching gears, has stated that they're taking back the idea of SS-109, the steel penetrator, 223 ammo being kept off the market. Why? People started to scream, but I think what we need to get people to understand is that how do I say this tactfully? Is that they are, at the day they come, make no mistake, they are coming. Because they haven't come yet doesn't mean they won't come in the future. And that's the mindset that only God can give to each man. Greg, I spend on my emails, I get them tonight too, I spend so much time trying to tell Christians that they love God, they can withstand, they can fight evil. Don't let them kill your children. Don't let them, and they always give me, well, thou shalt not kill. Well, that means thou shalt not murder. But again, Paul said if any man doesn't provide for his family, he's worse than an infidel. That's a dog. Yet how, Greg, can I say this? How, and this is a rhetorical question, I'll give it to you, how can you get people to understand that nowhere in the Bible does God say, go ahead and commit suicide? I've always been taught it's wrong. Yet people, under the guise of a false religious spirit, think that somehow watching their loved ones slaughtered is to the glory of God. Have you come to a rationale in your own mind? I haven't. I think they're just cowards.